Well, also throughout the day today, an increasingly tense and violent situation in Syria. Over the weekend, the UN Security Council met to vote on a draft resolution condemning the Syrian government's crackdown and also urging Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step down. Now, within the country itself, there have been deadly clashes on both sides, and Western leaders have criticized the decision by Moscow and Beijing not to cooperate. Here's a response by U.S. Ambassador Susan Rice.
Mr. President, the United States is disgusted that a couple members of this council continue to prevent us from fulfilling our sole purpose here, addressing an ever-deepening crisis in Syria and a growing threat to regional peace and security. For months, this council has been held hostage by a couple members.
Stand by. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton calls the unwillingness a travesty, pointing to an event a few days ago in which as many as 200 people were killed by Syrian forces in the city of Homs. And today, the United States closed its embassy in Damascus, citing security concerns. Now, RT correspondent Anastasia Churkina has been covering this process. She's in New York to shed some more light on the process and the problems still in play. Anastasia, let's talk about Russia first. Moscow has made it clear from day one that any transfer of power must be a decision made from within Syria and not by others. So talk about this point of view and why you think it's getting so much backlash.
Well, Chrissy, it's definitely like a vocabulary lesson gone sour. Some of the words we're hearing from the Western counterparts, really, at the United Nations have been quite expressive. And we have to say that after those comments that we just showed to our viewers, made by Susan Rice, Russia was asked to reiterate and comment on this kind of feeling of disgust coming from the United States. And Russia was quick to say that it would not mimic similar language, that Russia simply does not conduct diplomacy in such a manner. So it is something that Russian diplomats are not used to using, these kinds of words. And we are hearing a lot of those, like you said, coming out of the United States and the West: disgust, betrayal of the Syrian people, really suggesting that Russia and China would bear full responsibility for protecting the brutal regime on the ground, and so on and so forth. And Russia is saying, look, guys, why are you surprised that this veto took place? We were telling you in the days leading up to the vote that we would not support a resolution that would be biased, that would support one side of the conflict, and that would promote any sort of regime change. So this kind of really shock is something that Russia is raising its eyebrows to, because it was telling the West what would happen all along. Take a listen to how the Russian foreign minister has been commenting on this whole situation.
Some Western comments on the outcome of the UN Security Council vote on Syria sound indecent and almost hysterical. In this connection, I can't but remember the saying that those who are angry are rarely right. With these hysterical statements, attempts are being made to create a false picture of what is really going on in Syria. And what's really happening is that there are several, and not just one source of violence in Syria.
Well, it's key that Russia has been pointing out this entire time, Christine, that it's not just the Syrian government that's conducting the violence, but also the opposition groups. And it's been saying that logical amendments that it was suggesting to the rest of the international community were simply ignored, such as things like the political opposition separating from extremist group on the ground and underlining the importance of talks involving both parties. And the Russian foreign minister has said that it's just sad that the international community pushed through this vote when Russia was calling for just a few more extra days.
Anastasia, I've got to say this. You've got anti-government protesters in the street, the U.S. staying out of it at first and now calling for the leader to step down. It seems to me, other than the resolution not passing, there are a lot of echoes here of Libya. I guess I want to know from you, I mean, how do you think what happened in Libya, or do you think what happened in Libya will play a role in what's happening now in Syria?
Well, you know, Christine, Libya has definitely been talked about a lot at the United Nations leading up to this vote because Russia has been expressing huge concerns that the Libyan scenario could repeat itself. And it was actually saying that it does not want this possibility for months. It's not just, you know, minutes or days before the international community sat down to vote. And as we remember, when the Libyan resolution was being passed at the Security Council, Russia abstained from that vote. And this time around, it just felt like it would not be a wise thing to do, because what we saw happen in Libya was, instead of a no-fly zone being implemented, we saw a full-blown military operation, whereas that time the international community was the same way trying to convince Russia and the other countries that a military scenario is not being considered, where in fact it obviously was, and that's exactly what ended up happening.
Real quick, Anastasia, you know, UN Ambassador Susan Rice seems today to be sort of on a campaign of finger-pointing at Russia and China. But what are you hearing? What is next?
Well, what is next is definitely the most complicated question right now. We know that the United States and the EU are considering regional and unilateral measures against Syria, and this is something that Russia does not support by any means. We do know that the Russian foreign minister and the Russian chief foreign intelligence officer will be in Damascus, Syria tomorrow for talks, so we're hoping that some more light will be shed on exactly what happens next. But we do know that what Russia has offered is a stage for talks in Moscow for the Syrian government and the opposition, but whether or not this is going to play out in this more peaceful scenario or in a more aggressive way, including the West and the U.S., we're going to have to wait and see in the days to come.
All right, RT correspondent Anastasia Churkina keeping her eyes on all of the action there at the UN. Thanks so much.